Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to, depending on however you may look at your clock or wherever you may live, this early morning or middle of the night bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this early morning or middle of the night bonus upload, shall we? Today's first experience. I've been searching for some semblance of similarity in someone else's encounter for 3 years now, hoping another's experience might align even a bit with my own to validate it. Until last night, I had found details aligning with my own encounter, but nothing I felt was concrete enough to make my experience not sound absolutely insane. It still does sound insane, I know, and I've had no way to further explain any of it, so all I have is what I've witnessed. I found an encounter 18 days ago that sounds eerily similar to my own, the key difference being the familiarity of the voices mimicked, leading me to wonder if this thing had been watching us for a while. To get both of our voices down, it would have had to have heard us at the most recent 10 hours earlier before we had left for work. All right, to preface this, I typed all of this as a DM to send to someone after reading this other guy's story. So the syntax is going to be awful. Sorry, it's going to read like a trashy DM, but I honestly get terrified of this thing when I spend too much time talking about it. So I'd rather not type it all again. I've been wanting to write this since it happened in 2019. I legit get really uncomfortable the moment I start. I'm sure the thing isn't actually watching or whatever, but I don't know. I just hate retelling it. Honestly, I think it's important to share, though, because finding someone else's experience led me to finding several others that seemed to align with whatever I saw, and it was honestly so cathartic. I figured maybe someone else might be in the same boat and need some sort of validation that they are not insane. So I was living down in West Texas in this national park where the restaurant I was working at the time rested at the top of a 15-minute hike up a mountain trail from the housing they had us in. I closed up the restaurant after everyone had left for the night, so I was always an hour or two later coming down the hill than anyone else. Usually pretty empty, really quiet, uncommon to encounter anyone else, as the only thing at the top of the mountain is a closed restaurant, gift shop, store, and some other trailheads. There isn't much reason for anyone else to be on the trail at that hour. And this one night, I'm coming down, no moon, it's pitch black, empty trail, characteristically quiet. I rounded this last bend to get to my house, and right before I got off the trail to take a shortcut through the thicket of cactus and brush, there were maybe 15 to 20 trees. Even though it's desert, the top of the mountain has a high Sierra microclimate, when I hear my best friend / roommate call out my name clear as day in the other direction. He said my name, and when I turned, said it again. In retrospect, it sounded funny. It was close, 15 yards maybe, but it sounded far off at the same time, like if someone recorded his voice from far away and played it very nearby. It just sounded off, but not enough to flip a switch immediately, and maybe I'm painting the memory of it differently than it actually sounded. So I'm facing my house maybe 50 yards away, and the voice comes from directly to my left on this foothill of the mountain we had hiked around on sometimes. It has much more tree coverage than the trail I was on, and considerably more than the thicket separating me from the clearing surrounding my house. If you walked 5 feet in the direction the voice came from, you'd completely disappear from the view of anyone on that trail or on the back porch of the house immediately. So, hearing my friend's voice calling me over, I was like, oh, cool, we're night hiking. And I turned to follow it, but right before I take my first step into the tree line, I hear his actual voice down on our porch saying, "Hey, who are you talking to?" which stops me. I turned back to face the house, confused, just in time to see this thing burst out of the thicket. I was just about to shortcut through to begin with before hearing the voice and turned away. And from the exact spot I had walked down every single night, this thing bolts. It was humanoid technically, but the thing was tall and way too skinny for a human, at least 8 feet and slim. It looked inhumanely slender. It was hunched over, running like it just burst off the track mark, but kept that same form the whole time. Never got all the way upright. Okay, so as for the color, this is what's messed with me because, for one, I'm colorblind. And it was like a greenish/yellow thing, and I get greens and yellows mixed up a lot. This hue of green and yellow, at least, and for two, it looked like it was giving off its own glow, which has always sounded so absolutely ludicrous. I never tell anyone that I don't absolutely trust them to give me the benefit of the doubt before thinking that I am completely BSing. Because if I had heard this, I would honestly think someone, at the very least, might be BSing a little bit. Our back porch light was on, though, and the thing lined up with where it would have had to have been shining. So, if this thing was translucent, it definitely could have taken on that sheen by reflecting the porch light. The colors do kind of line up, I guess. If you'd reflected the light, it may have looked like this thing's color, but it certainly wasn't identical. Honestly, though, I swear it had its own shine to it. Like looking at a glow stick that's dying. More than enough to see, but kind of faint regardless. It was a light that definitely wasn't there a second before when I had gotten to the shortcut. It would have stuck out for at least 50 yards of the walk at least. It should be noted I had followed the thing's voice. 2 things would have happened. 1, I would have completely disappeared from view of anyone, and 2, I would have turned my back on whatever that thing was and entered into the thicket of trees, weeds, and cactus, far too dense for me to turn around, run, fight back, anything. And that trail I would have gone toward leads directly to the edge of a cliff that drops down into a massive break in the mountains. The window in Big Bend National Park. That cleanly drops all of 6,000 feet to a wide open desert below. That could be the purpose of that direction. If I was going to do some nefarious crap, it would be the perfect place to both find someone and lead them quickly to a spot where no one else would come up to you. Legit, in the middle of day, you could probably make someone disappear over there if you wanted. Anyway, how this thing was running, it immediately felt like I had spooked it. like how a deer runs off from a noise, but this was different, in that it seemed a lot more determined. It seemed intelligent, aware of its own movement, not just acting out on instinct. Kind of like spooked a person if they'd been watching you from the bushes or something. Like spooked, but sentient, and definitely acting like I had just foiled some nefarious plan, so naturally, I also bolted, exposing my back to this thing, but taking the opposite, slightly longer way back to my porch. My buddy, God bless his soul, was still there when I made it, and he asks me again, "Who are you with?" His face is just confused. He keeps looking past me, and I'm like, "You heard it too, right?" He said, Yeah. Where are they?" And I was like, What? There were multiple? Apparently, from his perspective, he had heard multiple voices alongside my own, all carrying on and joking around, talking back and forth pretty loudly. He said there were at least 3 other voices talking to mine, but that it sounded like a whole crowd coming down the trail. He said he could clearly hear us getting closer and closer for the past few minutes, and just assumed I had run into a hiking group and talked with them as we were heading down. Not the most uncommon thing in the daytime, but pretty uncommon for the hour of night. It took me a minute to show him that I wasn't messing with him and had not just split off from a group of hikers. I was completely alone and had not vocalized a word until he called up, "Who are you with?" It took a second to even express my side of what was going on. I was so out of whack, I couldn't even find the words to explain, so I just kept shouting, "I swear to God, I just heard your voice, and then this thing, dude, this thing," or something similar. Eventually it registers that there were no other lights on the trail. I wasn't using a flashlight that night, so maybe there was actually some moon out. And I had just heard his voice calling me off the trail and into the dark, and we both began to try and figure out what we had just witnessed. This part might be a little crazy, but I'm not implying anything. I'm just saying this is what I had been doing on the walk down before it happened. So obviously, walking home solo, I hadn't actually said a word. Whoever he heard was certainly not me, and I certainly didn't come with the crowd. But I had been praying like crazy on the hike down. There had just been this super dark negative energy in the house lately, and I was just trying to kind of surround myself with light and positivity, asking God to give me the strength before I walked back in. And out of nowhere, midway through the trail, I got this like absolutely overwhelming joy, like an absolute ecstasy. I was screaming inside, happy as bones, and just felt like I could take on the whole world. Like, no matter what came, I could take it. Maybe I am implying something because call me crazy, but I've always felt like that had something to do with how the night turned out, as opposed to how it maybe would have. I don't know. I know that part really doesn't make any sense, and it sounds insane. But so does the rest of it. So whatever, I certainly don't think it was a coincidence. I'm just not sure what to make of it. Every detail means every detail. That's just what was going on with your boy as the walk was happening. It would have been a noteworthy and memorable night had the thing not done any of this. It was that powerful of an energy. Anyway, that's pretty much it. The only other thing is our memories of it. Out of nowhere, I just sort of stopped thinking of it. Not like I forgot, but like it was hidden behind a thick fog in my head. The next morning, I told the story to a friend, and she uncharacteristically shut me down and just said something like, "Y'all are just crazy and getting scared of these mountains," and just walked away. It really was not like her to dismiss someone, especially a friend, without even hearing them out. She was a real empathetic person, It was legit, like she just heard something that triggered a memory she refused to touch and shut it down before it got too close. I don't know. I could be reading into it, but that's happened a couple of times. Anyway, we've been living on the mountain off and on for a few years at that point, and had never once heard or seen anything remotely similar to this thing until that night. We'd never even heard of a story vaguely resembling it. It just wasn't like we got spooked by our own house or trail we took twice a day, every day. And it wasn't like we were seeing and hearing things based on stories we projected into the darkness. But the weirdest thing happened the moment she walked away. It was legit like a fog slowly poured over the memory, and the last time I remember thinking of it was that moment. And then it just disappeared for months. How in the world does something that massive, that frightening happen in your life and you just stop thinking about it? And then one day it just popped back up. I was honestly so surprised and so unsure of how I hadn't thought of it in so long. It was almost more baffling than anything we actually witnessed. I asked my friend just before I sent this if he had felt the same fog, and he said absolutely. He doesn't really like talking about that night, honestly, and he's told me that, but I can't help but bring it up as often as possible, hoping by talking it through we'd find some sort of explanation for any of it what happened. Even as I'm typing this message, though, I felt like I'd asked him 1,000,000 times already and just forgot his answer. Maybe I have. That isn't a super uncommon thing to do, I guess. Anyway, that's pretty much everything. I really don't know what to make of this all. All I have are the details of that night in my memory of doing something bizarre afterward. I have never known what to make of it, but the other guy's encounter that I read a few weeks ago honestly helped me after 3 years of grappling with this experience. Just seeing something that might be similar seems like I've learned as much about it as I honestly felt comfortable knowing. I just figured maybe somebody else might be in the same boat and maybe needs some sort of validation. Just validation, I guess, anyway. Thanks, and I'm sorry if I wasted your time. Well, there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed this early morning or middle of the night bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that keeps the channel growing and going. And honestly, what gives people a place and a chance to share their experiences and theories judgment-free. Just simply treat it with the respect that we all deserve. Thank you. Everyone stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and definitely dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.